Hi, I'm Sandeep. I work in VMware as a software engineer, and I'm one of the engineers supporting this Spring Boot Migrator tool. Today, I'd like to show you the Spring Boot Migrator tool, certain capabilities, what it can do and what it can't do. Before we start, I would like to look at the problem in general. The problem that we are trying to solve is the repetition. So whenever you do any kind of migration job, it's you do discovery on how to migrate it, and then you do repeatedly over and over again if you have more than one application. So if you have one or two applications, it's fine. But if you have hundreds, it's a problem. You will have high amount of manual effort. And also, if you do have hundreds of applications, then you'll have teams of developers looking into these applications. The problem will become a consistency. No, not everybody approach migration in the same way. They might configure differently, and across your organization, your code will end up looking very different. Uh, our approach to this solution is reduce manual effort as much as possible with a Spring Boot Migrator recipe. A recipe for us is a set of instructions in Spring Boot Migrator 2 that automates code migrations, sometimes partially, sometimes fully. So the more and more recipes that you have, the less and less manual effort that one needs to do. Before we begin into the actual demo, I would like to look into the workflow of Spring Boot Migrator tool. You'll have an app to migrate, and that you will feed that into Spring Boot Migrator tool. And Spring Boot Migrator tool will read through the app, recognize some of the patterns in the applications, and will provide you recipes. And when you apply these recipes, you will get an automated migrated app. And sometimes this automated migrated app is not enough. You have to do some manual effort to get into a completely fully migrated app. What can it do, Spring Boot Migrator? Uh, right now, Spring Boot Migrator takes in three kinds of projects for migrations. One is Java Enterprise Applications. It can take Java EE app and convert it into a Spring Boot app. It can also do MuleSoft app, convert it into a Spring Boot app. It can also do Spring Boot app to Spring Boot app. Now, differences being the version upgrades. It can do 2.7 to 3.0. Today, I'd like to demo these three avenues where Spring Boot Migrator does migrations. One is Java EE, Mule App, and Spring 2.7 to 3.0 migration. So let's start with the Java EE migration. I have a demo app ready. Uh, so let's take that. So this is the app address. And this is the app that we are trying to migrate. It's a simple Java EE app, which uses Tommy to run as an application server. It has a simple call like a low. It's a REST interface for movie details. It has an entity called movie. It says an entity called movie. It has ID, director, title, yes, genre, and rating. And it has a bean service. It has a movie bean service which helps you find, edit a movie, delete a movie, get the list of movies. And then all of it is used in the REST controllers layer. So there's this movie bean, and if you post into slash load, it will load these movies, and there's a movie REST so that you can query these movies. And you can look at it. There is a HS. There's an in-memory database, So we don't have any Docker or Docker running in MySQL or anything. Everything is happening in memory. Um, and let's try to let's try to run this application just to see how it works. So let's do mvn clean install, and then mvn mvn tom e tommy run. Okay. Now the Tommy application is running. Let's query. So we'll ask these hard-coded movies types to be loaded into the in-memory database. Let's do that. So now it's loaded. It's sending it a success response, and then let's get the list of movies. So you do slash list slash movies, and you have the loaded movies printed out for you. Now, with this simple project, let's try to migrate this to a Spring Boot application. The way that you do that is you you fire up this application called Spring Boot Migrator.jar. You can find this jar from our open source repository. You can download it from releases, or you can build it locally. So let's run this jar minus jar Spring Boot Migrator.jar. So Spring Boot Migrator takes a set of commands to interact with the application. One of the command is scan. This is the way that you are feeding the application to Spring Boot Migrator. So scan, and you give the application path. It says scan this movie fund rest. So now it's scanning, reading the source code, and figuring out what and all recipes that it has in its bank to migrate this application. And these are the recipes that it figured out. And the first recipe initializes Spring Boot migration. What it does is it will convert this um, JEE application into a Spring Boot application by including the right dependencies from Spring Boot. So let's the way that you run recipe is using apply command, apply, and then the command, the recipe name. So once this is successful, um, what happens is it has made the necessary changes, and it has committed into the Git log. So you can see what only this recipe has done. So initialize Spring Boot migration. What has it done? It has changed the war package into jar, and it would have bought in some dependencies. Um, so some dependencies like Spring Boot to start test, and I'm sure there will be a dependency management here. Dependency management and dependency management. It got Spring Boot dependencies inside, and it added a Spring Boot app class which would run Spring Boot application. Added a properties file and a test stub. And let's see what do we have next. We have migrate JPA to Spring Boot. It has recognized that you have been using JPA. So there is this persistence XML, which is telling how to connect to the database and what is the username and password, which class that you have to look for, the entity description, and the entity manager. So it has detected all of this and to figure out, okay, it can help migrate Spring JPA to Spring Boot. So let's do apply the properties, and It is reading persistent XML, and then it has applied that migration. So let's see this migration. First, it has added H2 database, a runtime database, and it has deleted the persistence XML and took the URL, user, password, and driver information and converted it appropriately to application properties. All of this is copied over here. And some of the movie beans, a persistent context, the unit name is changed from unit name movie unit to default. And then let's take in another one is migrate stateless EJB. Uh, Stateless EJB, let's apply this recipe. Right. So let's see what this has done. Uh, this has converted at EJB annotation to at autowired annotation. And the same thing has been done in movie rest, and then movie being the stateless is converted into at service, and it's transactional because it has entity managers. And for some reason this Spring Boot starter JPA has been deleted. We need that's a bug. We need to add it later. Then migrate JAX RS. Apply. Let's migrate JAX RS. So let's see what has happened here. So as you can see, at path is converted into Spring equivalent, that is at request at REST controller and request mapping, and at post is converted into at request mapping with method is method equal to request method dot post. And in the movie REST, same thing has happened. At path parameter has been converted into at path variables, which is the Spring equivalent, and query parameter is converted into request parameters. And this at consumes application JSON is being replaced here as consumes is equal to application JSON, which is a Spring equivalent, and path parameter again to path variable. And it has automatically added a Spring Boot starter web because you need a web application setup for REST to wait on. And you can see there are other recipes. There's a Spring Cloud config server and a Spring Boot 2.7 to 3.0. I think we don't need to do that. We can do that, but it's not relevant to the application that we are trying to do. It is quite enhancements, and we can stop here and see, try to run this migrated application. And now this is a fully blown Spring app. So there is a dependency management. There is a Spring Boot dependencies, and the Spring dependencies are all included here. As I said earlier, I think it's the Spring Boot data JPA is gone, so let's include that back. Spring Boot JPA, and let's try to compile and run this. So now I'm stopping the Tommy server, and then I'm trying to compile. It's a good news that it compiles okay. And then if I do mvn Spring Boot run, it should run the Spring application. Yeah, it now it is a Spring application. It's not a JE application, and we can interact with it. Let's see if it works. Previously with Tommy, we used to do movie fun rest load, but now you can do slash load with boot and 200. We have some. It says that it has been successfully loaded all the movies, but let's ask to get all the movies and see if the data is there, and it's there. I think this is one of the demos on showing how a Tommy application or a JE application uh, can be uh, can be migrated. Now let's look into the migration of Mule Mule app migration. Let's open up the Anypoint Studio. So for people who is not familiar with the MuleSoft, it's an application server which based on the enterprise service patterns. Everything is based on messages, and you can do there's a UI component where you can design these flows, as you call it. So for this is an example. So you receive an HTTP request, and then there's a flow going to the next, log a message, and then insert do something with the database and set a payload and return. So if you look at all of these UI interactions are converted into XMLs, and the Spring Boot Migrator tool reads these XMLs and outputs a equivalent Spring integration code. Spring integration also uses this messaging pattern, and there is a good one-to-one mapping between Mule application and Spring integration. So it just reads as you wait on 8081 HTTP listener config. And this is my SQL configuration connected to port 3306, user and password, and this is the database. And the flow is like listen to slash users on get method and log once you get the request. And there is a table called users, and you count the number of users in here and name it as user count, and respond it to the caller with the number of users in the user count. So that's what it does. And I have a Docker running with MySQL, and there's a users table already. So let's examine that. So if I go to database, database table users. So there is users. Let's run this Mule application and see. Okay, okay. The application is deployed. So let me open up Postman. So it is 8081 users get, and if I send, there is a user count is 2, and that's exactly the number of users that I have. So if I create a new user, say 3, and do some email, and then commit. I do this, so I have user count. Now let's try to migrate this Mule flow into Spring integration. The way that you do that is you take all these flow XMLs and put it in an empty Maven project under resources folder, and you run Spring Boot migration tool. And Spring Boot migration tool will look into this resources folder and provide appropriate recipes. So I have a scaffold already present. So I have a new app. If you look into this, there is not much. There's nothing. It is an empty project. It's quite empty. There's one class which does nothing, and then there's this HTTP mule. The way it works is if I go to resources, cd to src main resources, then HTTP mule, and I'm going to delete all the uh, content of this, copy, paste it here, and I'm going to since the content is not changed, the the mule HTTP XML is present in the resources, and now you take the path and you follow the same flow as you followed with the JE app migration. You do Java minus jar Spring Boot Migrator dot jar, and then you do the scan of mule, and it recognizes that it is not a Spring Boot project yet, and it is providing you a recipe to initialize the Spring Boot app. So you do apply, and you give uh, that app. And then now if I look into this, it has generated a pom.xml uh, with Spring Boot test, Spring Boot starter, and it has added the dependency management here, and it has added a Spring Boot application and created an application properties and added a test scaffold. And now it has recognized that there are some new XMLs in the resources, and it can provide Java translations for it. And you can get this Java translation by doing apply migrate mule to boot. Okay. Yeah. Right. What has this done? And this has generated flow configurations uh, that is the translations from the XML to Java code, and then it added enable integration to start Spring Boot integration, and it has copied data from, for example, server port 8081. The config data is over here, 8081. It has copied this data from there. Let's look into the flow configuration. If you look into the HTTP mule.xml, and the first thing is this configuration, listener config, this is 8081, right? The appropriate translation is here, this 8081. And then it has detected that it is using MySQL config, and it has added the right driver class, and also it has brought in the Java connector, MySQL Java connector dependency automatically. And here we have to fill in the username and password for connection coordinates of database. So it's the root, and I think it is password is PW, and it has given an example of how the JDBC URL will look like. So I'm using MySQL. So I'm using, so not MySQL. The database name is Mule. So the database name is Mule, and we have the configurations ready. And the flow configuration, it treats as this is a flow with the name simple HTTP, and that has converted into a function with name simple HTTP, and it has detected that it requires DB operations, and hence it has auto-wired the JDBC template. And it says here HTTP listener config, the path is users, and the method is get. The equivalent translation in Spring integration is this. It's HTTP inbound gateway, and you wait on users. You wait on slash users, and after that, you log the message in info category, and which is provided here. It's log.info, and the message is present here. It's a received request, and the message is copied over here. Since if you can see that this is not a typed system on the right, but Java is a very much of a typed system. We don't know what kind of type that the payload will be having. So we'll add it to do to give him hints that what to do here. It says link to a multi-value map. It might not be the right type. So you take that decision on what type it should be. Since it's a get, there is no input that is coming into the payload, so we don't need any of this. So you can delete this to do. And if you can see, this handle will be here. Select everything. Select count star from users. So that is the JDBC query will be done here from this DB select. That is the equivalent translation. And the handle is number of users. It's like a hash payload, but this hash payload is not a Spring language. This is a Mule expression language. So there is a to do for you to do that. Substitute expression language with appropriate Java code. So you can take this. This payload is just payload dot to string. A P and H is payload, and this is header. So it's if you're printing out payload, just P dot to string. So now you can take this off. Let's go to MuleSoft Anypoint Studio, stop the application server, and let's compile and run the migrated Mule application. So mvn clean install. Okay, it runs, and mvn Spring Boot run. Okay, it runs. Now, since it's also copied the right configuration of 881 port, and this is running. If I hit this and get a response, so I'm getting a response from Spring Boot app rather than Mule app. That's it for Mule application demo. Let's go to the next demo. It's converting a Spring 2.7 application to Spring 3.0 application. I have a Spring 2.7 application already ready. As you can see, it's using Spring Starter 2.7.1, and it's a simple song application. You can give the number of times a song has been played and retrieve the statistics of the song. This project is conceived in design of showing some of the automated recipes that we can do, not necessarily the best practices for a Spring application. What does it do? So there's a song controller. You can get the list of top songs by region, and there's a repository which is a JPA repository, and then it's from a paging and sorting. It implements paging and sorting repository too, which returns top 3 songs per region, and you can find a song through locale, and you can view a song, get the song statistics, and you can post this add songs statistics. Um, and this is how a song will look like. It's saved in table songs, and with the ID and song name. And the song stat is just song how many times it has been played and the region it belongs. And there's a repository to query this. And there's a song service that gives an interface to query the songs through a service. And song controller uses the song service to interact with that. The translation service. This is a class which is outside of the uh, component scan. So it doesn't come with ORG's Spring Boot example. It is in some translation service. So in order to know for Spring to auto recognize this, you tell that in Spring.factories enable auto configuration. You give that translation service. Yeah, let's try to build this and run this 2.7 application. So I do this mvn clean install. Okay. Mvn spring boot run. fancy Spring loading animation. Okay, so the application is up and running. Let's make some requests to this application. Let's go to request RFPP. Let's add some stats. Say a song number ID number one has been played 100 times. ID number two has been played 50 times. 50 times. And then if I ask song stats, getting the stats, you have ID number one played 100 times and ID number two played 50 times. Um, so let's convert this Spring App 2.7 to 3.0. Uh, with the exception of a Spring App, we have built a custom tool to migrate Spring Boot application. This is to give a better understanding in what you're migrating. We're going to give you a recommendation, and we're going to give you an interactive way to run these recipes. This application is called Spring Boot Upgrade. Again, you can download this from our releases section, or you can build it on your own. The way you run this is you do jar minus jar, Spring Boot jar minus jar, uh, Spring Boot Upgrade, Spring Boot Upgrade, and you give the path of the Spring Boot app. Oh, sorry, I'm not in the right. Now it is scanning the 2.7 Spring application, and you can open this. And based on all the codes, the Spring Boot app has generated these recipes, and some of them, when you see a run recipe, you have an automated migration tool for it, and it tells what has changed, why this application is affected, and it also tells what to do in order to migrate. So let's go one by one. Let's go into the first recipe. It's to prepare for Spring 3.0 dependency. So this is a list of things that we have to do in order to not have a compilation error. There are some dependency coordinates have been changed, and this recipe will take care of that. So if you click on run recipe, that would run the recipe. And this is the first one, the actual act of converting the 2.7 to 3.0. And if I run this, so if you could see, uh, let's take it show history, Spring Boot version. The Spring Boot version is changed from 2.7.1 to 3.0.0. Uh, and the next one is the upgrade of Jakarta EE10. This is upgrade where the imports from Java X dot persistence should be changed to Jakarta dot persistence. So all of these imports will be changed for you. And you click run recipe, you can see that it automatically uh, changes that code. So if I look into updated history here, package, so there's in song.java, Java X is converted into Jakarta, and then song stat is Java X is converted into Jakarta persistence, and then song played is Java X into Jakarta. This also requires you don't need the version anymore. You just need a classifier. Um, the actuator in endpoint sanitation. This is one of the examples where we have found that you're using actuated on class path, and there is a change. By default, the options are set to secure default. Some of the things that you were able to see will not be visible anymore. So it's the responsibility of the application developer to know how to expose these values based on rule base this is one of the examples where Spring Boot tool might not be able to help you, but reading this change and understanding what has changed, you can do that by yourself. And there is references on how to do it and what has been changed over here, so that it will aid your migration. And there's another recipe, logging date format. The logging date format has been changed to have a T to support ISO standard. If you don't want that, you can explicitly tell the logging pattern with date format. It is telling you how to add that. Go to application properties and you do this. You can run this recipe and it will do it for you. So it's over here, application properties. Yeah. And next one, the deprecation of the Spring factories. In Spring 3.0 onwards, it does not recognize Spring factories. Instead, you have to copy the contents into this file, the org Spring Boot framework auto configuration imports, and it tells you what to do. Uh, you can let SBM do that for you. You run the recipe. So now what will happen is the Spring factories contents will be gone, and uh, the contents from Spring.factories, that is com.translation service, is been moved here to this auto configuration.imports, so com translation service. So the banner support, its banner supports has been removed, like for banner.gif or JPEG, all of those is gone. You have to use text-based banners. And we have a GIF banner over here. It's because it has discovered using GIF banner. It is reporting this. So you run the recipe, that will be deleted. So you can see the banner.gif is gone. Uh, the another recipe is constructor binding. And the constructor binding has been improved in the 3.0. There are cases in which you don't need constructor binding. If you have one single constructor, it'll automatically recognize it as a constructor bound. There's a class called region config. That's detected in region config. It can do this transformation uh, and without any cause. So there is this constructor binding, and if you run this recipe, and that will be gone. So this is then constructor binding is gone. Another one is paging and sorting repository. So if I look for paging and sorting repository over here, previously this paging and sorting repository used to inherit CRUD repository too. But since it's been removed, if you want anything related to CRUD repository, you have to implicitly add it. So if you would want that, you can run that recipe, and you would have that CRUD repository come imported for you. And this is a commons multi-part upload, and this is one of the recipes where there is no automated recipe for it. We have recognized that in song upload config, commons multi-part resolver has been used, and in 3.0, it's been removed. It's basically, it sets the upload limit size, which all you can configure with the application properties. So for now, the way we solve it is just let's just delete it. And all of these auto configuration of micrometer, JVM metrics, all of these are auto generated from the Spring release notes. So we need to add more recipes. If we are open for contribution. If you'd like to be involved in our community, you can open a pull request, evolve the recipes that we have in our Spring Boot Migrator. I think this would have this would have migrated the application from 2.7 to 3.0. Let's try to run and see how it goes. So let's see, mn clean install. Okay, it runs. And then mvn Spring Boot run. So now it is running as a Spring 3.0 version. Let's make some requests and see if it works. So the first one is it's song one. So we got a 200. That's a good sign. So if the song start with 2, the times played is 50. Let's just say, and look at this. It is 50. And let's get the song stats. So yeah, you got 100 that has been played and 50 is the little one. Okay, I think that concludes the demo of moving 2.7 to 3.0. So what is next for Spring Boot Migrator? I think we are looking for active community participation, and hopefully we'll have a very thriving community where we can add people can add lots of recipes into our Spring Boot Migrator, and the entire world can benefit with the repository of migration knowledge in one tool. Find any bugs or any improvements that you could do you could add to a Spring Boot Migrator. Please open a PR request and we'll be happy to look into it. Uh, And I'd like to end with the people who bought you this Spring Boot Migrator. Fabian Kruger is the lead in this Spring Boot Migrator team. He has built this tool from ground up. A huge thanks to him. And he is not able to join us today because he's on a beach with his family in a parental leave. And also our contributors. There are we have a small and active community now, and we'd like to thank all the contributors who have made it happen.